Due to the following CBS School Break special, Magnum PI will not be seen today. It will be broadcast tomorrow in the regular time period.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
If you like comic books, then you definitely like comic art. Visit comicartfans.com to see original comic artworks and custom drawings that people have collected and posted online. Coming soon, Comic Art Fans is hosting an in-person event called the Original Art Expo that will focus on the hobby of collecting original comic art. The Original Art Expo will be held at the Doubletree by Hilton Hotel in Orlando, Florida on January 26th through the 28th, 2024. They will have over 30 exhibitors and 60 comic artists. Spend the weekend in an intimate setting with some of the best creators in the world. Purchase or commission a piece of original comic art. Visit the Comic Art and Illustration Galleries. Attend the Saturday night auction and pizza party and hang out with your fellow comic art enthusiasts. The Original Art Expo is sure to be the world's premier visual storytelling art event, so don't miss out. Go to oa-expo.com to get your tickets today and visit comicartfans.com to see what comic art collecting is all about.
Hi, I'm Alex Ross. The two pieces are sort of a type. They're both kind of recreations of artwork that existed in the 90s. In fact, this piece here for the Avengers is in most ways a recreation or a tribute to George Perez's poster version from the mid-90s, where he did a shot that featured in it a figure of Captain America that was very similar to what I've done here, positioning of the Vision or positioning of Hawkeye, and I believe a few other elements are very similar to that piece, and it's consciously so. I was building off that inspiration, but I kind of refitted my design to fill out bigger shots of the figures so that I was making a wider composition and getting in a lot of the same characters, but still not quite as many as what George himself did, because George's thing was always to try and get in the maximum amount of content into pieces that he did.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. It's been a while, but it's good to see Rich Johnston of BleedingCool.com. How are you, man?
Doing good, doing good. It's late at night in London, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, as always, I try to make it convenient for my European guests and talk to them. And I'm happy to do an afternoon show in States time. But yeah, man, there's a lot to talk about. We've already got people lining up and watching. You know,
looking forward to it. People getting spicy. I'm so pleased to hear.
Indeed. Well, let's start with the subject at hand. Cancel pigs. I was completely bamboozled by this hashtag on social media.
Well, surely it's a new series coming out for Mark Miller next year. We're from Dark Horse. Mark Miller pigs. I mean, like Jim Lee's Wildcats. I'll buy a copy, certainly.
Well, Mark, all right.
I don't know if he did it, but someone registered the domain name about 4-5 days ago. So someone's already got it ready. I mean,
of course they do. Of course they do.
But it wasn't me.
Now, what I don't understand. Oh, thank you. Hey, Zach, how are you? He's saying hello. Good to see everybody. Interesting. What I guess I don't understand is Mark made some complaints about just raunchy movies, and then all of a sudden now Gail Simone and Mark Waid find themselves in this weird spiderweb. Like, explain it to me, Lucy, in the words of Ricardo. I don't understand what's happening here.
He did start about, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, trying to do this, talking about how you don't get good comedies anymore, and it's all because of cancel pigs. And that didn't get much traction. And so a week later, he came back, and it's now all about stuff that some very nasty comments that some people made about a comic book retailer, and now they were the cancel pigs. And that's the time when it caught. So now it's become a trending worldwide, all this kind of stuff. And yeah, but it's not like it's a new. He's complaining about people being cancelled on social media or in real life or whatever you like. It's not as if this is a new thing. I was actually looking back because a lot of this stuff I agree with Mark about. I'm not a big fan of cancelling people based on their beliefs, on whether or not they should be allowed to do comic books or other stuff or not. And lots of people have. From all sides of the political spectrum, some people have been cancelled for books because someone found they were socialists. Other people have been cancelled for books because they were talking about left-wing politics too much. And suddenly Chuck Wendig isn't allowed to do Darth Vader anymore. And the other way around. So you do get the British writers, Mike Barron, you get people who get that kind of stuff going the other way. So there's definitely a bit about it. The first time I think this kind of happened in a big way was 10 years ago, and I looked this up because it brought me back when it was Orson Scott Card, who was going to be doing an issue of a few issues of Superman that would have been drawn by Christopher Sprouse, and it kind of came up that he was on the board of it was a pressure group against gay marriage, and so the whole big thing kind of came out, and then it was very, very big on early-ish social media, and you can find there's a Guardian article about this in which both Mark Millar and I are both quoted about saying how we don't think this cancellation thing is a good idea, and I still don't. Over the years, all sorts of people have had pressure put upon them. I was just thinking again about Nick Spencer when he did Secret Empire. And
Hail Hydra, yes, Captain America. Hail Hydra, indeed.
Can't make Captain America a Nazi, and well, they kind of didn't. The whole story was about that. I thought it was an interesting story, and then it gets into his earlier politics when he was a politician in Cincinnati, I think, for the Charter Party, and then all this kind of stuff comes out, and I like to know about creators. I think a lot of this stuff can be very interesting, but I wouldn't want to not read their stuff because of it. And I got into a lot of fights and arguments with people about this at the time, and I still feel some people, people who are quite close to me, and I still feel the same way, and so I do feel the same way that Mark does. However, when you start personalizing it, you're just kind of doing the same thing back. When you start using pigs as the name, that's a very kind of dehumanizing thing, and you're just doing it back. So I'm definitely against cancellation, and I know a lot of people will definitely disagree with me about that, but I don't want to be dehumanizing or attacking people for doing that, because this is the thing. If it's about free speech, and I think it is, then you have the free speech to say someone's terrible, and say I'm terrible, or say Mark Millar's terrible, or say this comic book retailer is terrible. It's all kind of part of the same thing, the whole paraphrase Voltaire thing. I disagree with what you say, but I will defend you to your death, to my death, to say it. And that's kind of why I'm on it. And I know a lot of people aren't. And some people will be one way against me, and other people will be the other way against me. And I usually find myself in the middle of these arguments with no one on my side. I mean, not even now Mark Millar, it seems. So, hey, there we go.
But what I'm confused by is, first of all, I agree with you. And listen, I've been I hate saying journalist because I don't, a lot of responsibilities adhere to that just simple phrase.
I always reject. Yeah.
But I do believe in the First Amendment here in the States. And as you said, I'm
envious of you having that. I'd love that over here. It'd be great.
Well, yeah, I think free speech is important. But that said, if you weaponize and really go out and hate on a group or an individual, that's when I start having issues. And I have seen it. I've seen it on both sides, and I hate saying on both sides because it echoes a former president that I am not a big fan of on both sides. But I agree with you on that basic point. Help me out on why Gail and Mark Waid got labeled in this, and I know also to a degree Kelly Sue DeConnick as well.
This. I think there's some other projects going on which some people thought Mark was involved with, which might not have been. I'm not an expert on this one. I'm not entirely sure what's going on there, so I'm kind of reserving judgment.
Well, I will say that I just noticed literally minutes before we got on that Gail is having a direct conversation with Mark.
Talk's always good.
And truly, I mean, that's the thing. I really like all four of these people very much, and it's like, what the hell's going on? And I know Mark has expressed political views, but never in any sort of weaponizing way. And I know he came to defense of this comic retailer. And as I understand it, clarify if I'm wrong, but this gentleman was basically complaining that the big two are putting out all these, as he says, woke comics, and that they're not selling.
Characters, the writers putting themselves in the books. I think that's
yes,
the thing.
Yes, and listen. Anybody when
some of the ones he chose were things like Captain America, which I've been reading recently, and absolutely JMS is not putting himself in this book. He's writing this hugely heroic, courageous, tiny kid who absolutely JMS is not trying to say, oh, and this is who I am. He's absolutely, this is who I wish I could be, which is kind of what Captain America is. So you get a few of these things. I would probably disagree with the retailer, but it's his store, and
is he talking?
Effective, absolutely.
Is he talking about specifically the Straczynski run? Is he talking about
books that are out at the moment? So I think
okay,
maybe it's other ones. I don't.
Well, I don't know. I mean, and again, because in principle, I agree that it's a tightrope to put something political in a comic when you want a general audience acceptance, and I think that you have to be careful. I mean, we'll get to TV, but I think Doctor Who and Russell Davies and what he has done in the 3 specials, I think they were good, and I think he handled it well. I wasn't a big. I guess we are talking about TV right now. Chris Chibnall, I was not crazy about his run. I was rooting for Jodie Whittaker as a woman Doctor Who. I'm like, great, we're getting something different, cool. But it felt a lot of times like the politics were more important than the story. And I think when you do that,
I think this is Doctor Who, and it's kind of like that's often been the way. I mean, I think about some of my favourite ones from back in the day and stuff that I've read and seen, and they were kind of pretty political. Things like Sunmakers or Genesis of the Daleks, or
certainly,
I think Happiness Patrol, all sorts of stuff, and also all of Russell T Davies's ones and all of Stephen Moffat's ones are they far more political, I would say, than Chris Chibnall kind of ever did. Certainly in terms of radical. I would say Chibnall was all over the place in terms of politics and stuff.
Well,
Russell T Davies, and this is quite fun. We're going, we'll get Russell T Davies back, and Russell T Davies has come back and has done exactly what he did the last time, and now
sure.
And it's kind of like, he's doing what he did before. Things like gridlock and all this kind of stuff. Absolutely. I kind of enjoy anything that's done with kind of passion. I've read and enjoy all sorts of stuff from right-wing, left-wing creators, books with messages that go in either directions. As long as they're well told, I kind of enjoy them. But that's me, and other people might have different experiences. So, we'll see.
I understand. I see people in the chat that are saying some pretty inane shit, and I guess I
can't see that.
But well, they're oinking away about cancel pigs, and it's like, well, that's really not helping. And what again? I'm just looking for clarification.
I'm against cancellation for people's beliefs. I don't think anyone should be.
But also, like,
books.
I think Russell, if I may, Rich, I think Russell Davies is very, and I think Moffat was as well, able to weave an idea into a story, but that it was part of the story rather than just, hey, look, here's just some symbols and without really making it part of the story. I don't know.
I never really saw that, I guess. I mean, the thing is,
you didn't see it because again, they can, just like Serling in the Twilight Zone was able to get political and do it in the visage of sci-fi. Go ahead.
I don't see it as any different with Chibnall. I mean, like I said, I know I have Doctor Who blinkers on. I'm never going to see a bad episode of Doctor Who. I'm never going to read a bad episode of anything. I'm always going to love, because it was the show when I was 5.
Sure.
And that my dad watched, and now my kids watch, and I have apps, and I've even written some Doctor Who comic books now and things. So I have definite blinkers on. So I'm never ever going to be impartial or have any kind of view about Doctor Who apart from wasn't that brilliant. So again, if you're looking for a critical view, I'm probably not the person. On Bleeding Cool's guy called AD Tantamed, he's much better doing critical views. I just generally write a piece saying, wasn't this cool? Wasn't this cool? Wasn't this cool? So we have different rights to different folks, I guess.
I guess again, I guess like I said, I was looking for clarification. Getting back to comics, why Wade and Kelly Sue and Gail were being labeled. I mean, again, I don't know. I just think right now, I think the market is trying to serve all fans of comics. I think the amount, especially of comics that DC and Marvel puts out, that I think it's great that they are trying to give comics to diverse audiences that maybe felt underrepresented in the past. And I think that's great.
Always have. This is stuff that the publishers always tried, at least one way or another, push things here and there. I was just reading some stuff about Black Panther back when he was first introduced in Fantastic Four. Do you know the story about why he has a full face covering? Do you know this one? So they put cover, and the distributors would allow it because they wouldn't have allowed a Black Panther on the Fantastic Four having an African face.
I understand.
And that's why with Jack Kirby's original designs, if you look at them, it's just like mask face kind of thing, and then he has to go with a full face. And that was the 60s, middle. Well,
sure. No, I realize
Marvel, DC have always tried in their way, relative to the time, to try and push stuff. And I don't think it's a really political thing. They're just looking for new audiences. Everyone's always just looking for new audiences. And sometimes they get them, and sometimes they don't. I do think the direct market is interesting because I think it kind of. I've always seen the comic industry since it began in America and before then as constantly changing with the world. It jumps from one thing to it tries to find something hot, and it jumps to something else that's hot, and it moves through genres and periods really fast. There's no. It's all down to what's making the money. There's no sentiment. The direct market kind of came along, and I think for a little while the direct market put comic books in amber. It kind of preserved the superhero fan, the collector fan. Superheroes were coming back, they were hot, and I think the direct market preserved them. And all the other genres, certainly from Marvel and DC over the years, they've kind of fallen away. But the direct market kind of preserved superheroes and the superhero market and the superhero fan and the collector and the stories, possibly longer than it would have otherwise, which is great because I loved loads of his comics, and I still do, including the new stuff. But I think the biggest issue now is that things are changing again, and the amber maybe can't hold as much. You look at the big American originated comic books are the ones coming out from Scholastic and Random House in bookstores. And I know people drop things like Dogman, but it's not just that. It's also all the works of Raina Telgemeier. It's the Best Friend stuff from Shannon Hale, The Investigators. There's lots of stuff that Bunny versus Monkey from Jamie Smart is another one that's selling huge numbers here. And I think the market is kind of like shifting again. And the publishers are doing their best to try and catch up.
Agreed.
That's generally, as far as I can tell, pretty much what's kind of going on. Because if you can sell a book, that's pretty much all they really care about.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Yeah.
Mostly. If you've done some terrible things to terrible people, I mean, I don't know, they might try and look the other way a bit, but that's the only thing I can think of is if you stop people wanting to work with you. But apart from that, it's generally if you can show someone that you can make money for them, they'll quite happily take it.
What I don't understand is this conspiracy theory that there's a movement to cancel the direct market, and I understand that.
I want to preserve it as long as I said.
Well, sure.
I've enjoyed the preservation of the direct market. I think it's great. I would like to.
Hey, man,
as long as possible.
Absolutely. Good Lord, during COVID. The resiliency of and the ingenuity of stores to survive with curbside service and everything else they did, it was fantastic.
That opened a pizza oven, so it became an essential service. We're selling pizza now, and you get your comics with the pizza. And so, people, and you're right, it's ingenious. And a lot of online stuff happened. Then you got a lot of ordering. So many companies kind of set up on the basis of that, and some of them are still doing well as well. So. There are most definitely challenges, and they're huge challenges to comic stores, and people will talk about lots of them. The biggest ones I see, and this is from my perspective, so there may be many other perspectives, is things are too expensive, and that's pretty much the big one. In the UK, we've been hit by Brexit as well as excess shipping charges, but I mean, printing costs have gone up so much. I mean, it's hard for people to actually print them in the way they used to as well. So there are a lot of challenges there. And I'm not entirely sure what the solutions are when it comes to how much a comic book costs, apart from, as Mark Miller talks about, I mean, the excitement, making people get so excited about things that they just have to spend that money on whatever the thing is. And that is absolutely a definite aspect. So yeah, there are lots of challenges, but I think, yeah, but it feels weird for people to focus on one or just one or two when there are a myriad. I mean, I'm so astounded that, you know, comic book stores have succeeded and have survived as much as they have. Some have closed this year, but from the numbers, when I ever look at them, whenever I try and tally what's closed and what's opened, it's pretty much level pegging. For every store that closes, another one somewhere opens. And that's, I mean, this is the print market. By now, I thought print was meant to be dead, wasn't it? That was the thing. We were all told that print would have died by now, and no, it's great. I mean, I'm surrounded right now by print, and there's more coming in.
You were pulling up comics as we were talking before we went on the air, and that's great.
Always got a few comic books. This is a weird one. Where I found this one. This is Cromwell. Now this is by David Quantick and Mike Collins and Mike Batt. Some big names, but it hasn't got any kind of distribution in the comic book stores. It's just been in a few British newsagents, and it's amazing. It's written by a guy called Mike Batt, who in the UK is best known for being a pop star. He's had gold albums. He co-wrote things like he wrote Bright Eyes for the Watership Down stuff. Also, he would do all the Wombles music. He's known for discovering Katie Miller, and I think writing Phantom of the Opera music. So, and now he's decided to do comic books, and he cosplays as his own characters at comic conventions, and that's amazing. So I've just been picking those up and reading through them. It's kind of like a French kind of steampunk kind of stuff, and it's gorgeous. And it's written with a guy called Quantick, who's a major British TV comedy writer. And I'm really excited. And drawn by Mike Collins, who I know doing stuff with Doctor Who and the like.
Oh, yeah.
So bring it back to Doctor Who. Always. Everything comes back to Doctor Who in the end. Doctor Who, Douglas Adams, and I apologize. He's going to go there.
I understand. I'm going to try and sort through because there's a lot of crap right now in the in the chat. But and David, I appreciate first of all a couple comments you make. Miller never made these posts on Facebook. They were revealed as fake. Yep, absolutely.
Oh, I didn't see the post on Facebook. So okay.
Yeah, and again, this is the manipulation, unfortunately, with social media. Now, David also says that.
That's what I was trying to say.
Well, forgive me if I mischaracterized it. Absolutely.
About like character creators trying to put themselves into their stories. I think
and you're right. Now that I think of it, that really was more the intent of the retailer.
That's what other people picked up on.
And again, it's the market will decide if that's a good comic or a bad. It's that simple. And truly, both comics that if people perceive them as extreme right or extreme left.
I love some extreme right comic books. I love some extreme left comic books. I've enjoyed both.
Well, I outside of like people like Ethan Van Sciver, who's obviously been self-publishing.
Well, I know there's a great book called I think it's called The Infidel, which is really quite it's very heavy and Islamophobic book, but it's all done in the manner of things like Year One, Batman Year One, and it's a real polemic, but it's a very interesting read, and you get an idea into a mindset. I mean, I like all those chick track comic books back in the day, which is all about preaching evangelical.
Oh yeah, which we've talked about. Yes, the Jack Chick.
But I think they're definitely bad.
They're batshit crazy.
Alan Moore also says you learn more about reading bad stories than you do from reading good ones, and I like his take on that. You learn stuff. There's always stuff to learn, I think. But and I mean, again, he's written what you might call some extreme left comic books.
Listen,
and then you get things like V Vendetta, which is a hugely kind of libertarian, anarchic book. I mean, the politics and that are all over the place. It's a great story.
Again, my problem with some, whether it is, and sadly, I've seen it more on the right than the left. And actually, shame on me because I have seen it on the left too. When you weaponize your opinion, that's where I have a problem. I don't mind you making your message in your comics. That's fine. But then when you attack other creators for disagreeing with you or for their point of view, that's where I have a problem.
I'm reserving the right. I'm allowed to publicly disagree with people or say people that I think they're wrong. But that's only ever from that perspective. But I'm not in any way wanting anyone to stop buying them or cancelling them or anything. But
hey,
I do
if they
like
find an audience, if they find an audience, great. Okay, fine. But again, I think you can enjoy your books, whatever your political stripe is, without shitting on somebody else. Don't shit on their party. I just think it's that basic.
When you're promoting your own books, I agree with you. This is not a new thing. I remember this back in the day. I'm thinking about Dave Sim now, constantly going on about Marvel and DC stuff when he was pushing Service, and it was very funny, and it wasn't that personal, I suppose. But yeah, some people have definitely pushed themselves as an alternative to something else that's already out there, and they will definitely kind of weaponize that as part of their marketing. And yeah, I can see it. I mean, I probably done it myself at some point as well. It's not great.
Mark is here. It's possible to hold two thoughts in one set at the same time. Superior sales are grim, and the solution probably isn't to ally with the alt-right. Aren't mutually exclusive statements. Well, I'll hear if I Mark, I'll tell you, and in fact, Mark and I've had this discussion when, and I didn't see it as a political thing, but a lot of people on the right glommed onto when Marvel introduced all the legacy versions of some of their mainline characters. Amadeus Cho as the Hulk, Riri Williams as Ironheart, even Sam Wilson has taken over as Cap. And I always felt like the interesting example was what Jason Aaron did with Thor, having both the original Thor and the Jane Foster Thor story happening simultaneously. The other examples, the main line, Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, were off stage, and these legacy characters took over their books. And while I understand and appreciate, if I may, I'll finish my thought, the idea of introducing these new legacy characters to then have everybody else off stage, I'm like, it's a reasonable expectation to buy a book that is titled Iron Man and expect a Tony Stark story. And I mean, this is something I talked about with Bendis. I talked about it with Mark. I talked about it with Axel Alonso when he was editor-in-chief. And again, I think a lot of people on the right are like, see, this is what's wrong. And it's like, well, yes, but I understood the good intentions behind it, but I also understand the expectation of, I just want to read a Tony Stark story. I don't care what my politics are. I'm just looking for an Iron Man story.
I mean, I don't think anyone really complained when Mark Millar turned Kick-Ass into a black woman for a whole series. That suddenly didn't seem to be an issue. But that's possibly what I'm talking. Maybe think about this. I think Marvel, if they had a problem, was doing everything all at once because they hadn't done anything for a while. And there was a big, and I think if they would have, because all they were doing, they were basically trying to create new characters, and they were using the existing books to kind of spotlight their characters, and to some degree, it's worked. You see the success of things like we've had Miles Morales or Kamala Khan characters, and I think we're now getting Riri Williams and things that's happening. So basically they were throwing a bit of spaghetti at the wall. Maybe they threw too much spaghetti at the wall at once.
That was my feeling back then, 10 years ago. Yeah.
Again, Marvel and DC, they've kind of always done this. I mean, if you think about the DC Silver Age, where they all start to bring back all the characters, and it's different people. It's when you have the new Flash, it's not Jay anymore, it's Barry, and then later, of course, you get Wally. So they're always kind of trying to bring new people in. I mean, again, Iron Man, we had Rhodey for a good while leading that book as well. So
fantastic.
And no one seems to. If you read it when you're a kid, you don't care. If you read it when you're an adult and you've had 30 years of reading this character, then maybe you care more. And if we have an older audience now reading superheroes, maybe now they care more than whatever the audience was when Jim Rhodes came along. So maybe it was based. You got different angles coming together that caused that reaction. But also, you also have the ability that you have any thoughts can go out there and be echoed back at you through all sorts of places. I know I do that myself. So I think you get a bit of a kind of a perfect storm when this all kind of came together at once, I think.
100%. And truly, Wade even said, he's like, hey man, it just kind of happened. And unfortunately, it's comics, especially at the big two, it's like a big luxury liner. It can't stop on a dime. It's like, well, we're already in this story and we're a few issues in, unless they really go to that overt moment of canceling the story.
They can stop on a dime when there's a pandemic.
Well, they certainly did. You're right. But also, you're right about that. Here, I want to, because Mark continued his statement, and I want to get it on here. Comics shops are in trouble. We have to do everything to stop them. And I'm going to sell my comics exclusively on Kickstarter. Are mutually exclusive statements. I'm here, and Mark says the market has already decided. All the main characters swap for women, and people of color stopped being published years ago. That people keep acting like it's a problem is disingenuous. Again, I think the market is big enough to handle both types of stories. I don't see the problem. Tim Sheridan.
We have
even beyond people of color, I think Tim Sheridan is telling a great Green Lantern story with Alan Scott. And I'll even confess that when James Robinson made Alan Scott gay, as he did with the Earth 2 New 52 version, I'll confess that I'm like, I don't understand why you needed to make Alan Scott gay. I'm cool with a gay Green Lantern. Did it have to be Alan Scott? But then James Tynion came along. And James Tynion told a great spin on the original origin in that 80th anniversary Green Lantern. And I'm like, well, that's an interesting story. I want to read that story, because what is it like for a closeted gay man to not have to only worry about his secret identity as a hero, but who he actually is? That is an interesting story. I am interested in reading that story.
I like that angle of superheroes, because the idea of, I mean, to some degree, we've gone away from superheroes with secret identities now. There's fewer than there used to be. Some of them come back, like Superman's, but there are fewer than there used to be. And when people are writing new superheroes now, creating new ones, they often don't have secret identities at all. And maybe that's actually reflective of the way we are as a society now, is you can be yourself more than you could have been in the past. Or not. So I again, it's something that, was it Stan Lee said, it's the world outside your window, it's the Marvel universe. It's always meant to be reflect what's going on and the social mores of the day to some degree, and maybe even DC as well to some degree. And so, yeah, if you're going to if you look at what's been happening in society, and there's a greater presence of gay people, queer people, or trans people, then how do you actually reflect that? Do you do it one-on-one? Do you do it as an allegory? How do you aspect it? And I would say that maybe the change in superhero status is more of that. It's more of an allegory. You can basically be who you are all the time. You don't, Clark Kent does not have to go back in the closet anymore. I mean, he does, but maybe he doesn't have to.
Well, it was an interesting experiment when Bendis did that. And I know Brian is a big proponent of, why do we need secret identities in this age? Is that old hat? I don't know. Again, maybe I'm too old to judge, because I don't know, because again, it is a power fantasy.
Child power fantasies. All those people, they don't know. Secretly, I am this person. And that is the initial power fantasy of the superhero for kids. And I definitely love that. The concept that all these, if I'm bullied at school, but little do they know that I am secretly someone from another planet, or I have mutant powers, or all these things, but I can't let anyone know. I can't reveal my secret identity. So there's a power fantasy in there. I think it was Kurt Busiek who talked about that being one of the central power fantasies. But there are lots of power fantasies in the world, and maybe we should reflect different power fantasies. I mean, I think that's what superheroes does so well. Lots of people feel frustrated about their lack of power in society, and a good superhero book, at its heart, should be either fulfilling that frustration that you have, or even inspiring you to find a way out. And it just happens that power fantasies now might be a little bit different to how they were when we were kids. I would say in the 70s, in the 60s. I'm not going to make any judgments, but so again, if we've got an older audience, maybe the power fantasy needs to be different.
Well, again, there's room for I think the classic. I mean, it really, secret identities too, and I think it was pointed out very well 15 years ago when we were in the midst of Civil War, where Peter Parker takes his mask off, and everybody goes after not only him, but Mary Jane and Aunt May as well. Yeah. And it's like, and that has nothing to do with, well, at least in my opinion, it's more protecting your family by being this vigilante rather than closeting who you are.
I've certainly seen people's families being gone after from being things that someone said online, and they've gone after someone's family, and I kind of thought, that's beyond.
Well, that's what I mean, man. That is what I am against, is the weaponization of your point of view. that you're really going after people, you're doxing people, whether you're doing the individual that you disagree with or the family or whatever. Come on, man. And that's happening in all facets of society. And I agree with what Peter Beiser said here. I gotta go. Man, the chat is
to pop up. Okay.
But the big problem is that we're not getting kids reading comics. But exactly, you're right, Rich. It's not the same kind of comics that we adults are reading. But Dogman and Wimpy Kid.
So many more. I mean, people keep throwing out Dogman, and Dogman is the biggest selling. But all the work of Raina Telgemeier or Shannon Hale, or we talked about before. I mean, I've got a bunch on my shelf here, and my kids love it. In Britain, there's a great comic book called The Phoenix Comics Weekly, which is like a no advertising, subscription based, and it's created. And lots of comic books have actually come out of that. They've become their own graphic novels as a result. But I remember seeing that when only a few people were buying it, and now loads of people are. Kids are buying comics. I want to know what's going to be happening in 15 years' time when the 10-year-olds who are reading Investigators now, and there's millions of them, grow up and they want other comic books. Because things like 2000 AD in Britain only existed because there were kind of kids' comics that were played up and they were able to grab that audience and pull them forward a little bit more.
Totally.
There's a great comic book in Britain called Viz Comic, which is not to do with a manga company. It's an adult comedy book that's purely based on old British weeklies and the kind of like characters who would exist for like one page. And it's incredibly, it's scandalous, it's scandalous, it's hilarious. It's the least politically correct comic book in the planet, and it's wonderful. But that only exists because it's based on the stuff that kids were reading when they were 5, 6, and 7, and just turning them into something else. And so that's what I want to know. There's a great comic book creator called Kev F. Sutherland, who used to work for Marvel in the day. He's run British comic book conventions, and he's a stand-up comedian. He's a TV presenter. He does all sorts of stuff here. He used to ink Mark Buckingham on Doctor Strange, now I think about it. But he's got a new series of books, which are graphic novels that he started in lockdown, I think, which are his Shakespeare adaptations. Hilarious Shakespeare adaptations. And they were initially done for like a YA audience, or certainly I enjoyed them. He did a thing on Hamlet, doing it as a 1970s punk called The Prince of Denmark Street, set in London. And he did a heist comic book called The Midsummer Night's Dream Team, and it is the actual Shakespeare play redone as a heist. And he puts the back, and he's got a new one out, and it's amazing. It's simply Richard III, and it's his take on Richard III if it had been written and drawn by Dav Pilkey of Dogman. And it is so funny. It's one of the best Shakespeare adaptations I think I've come across. It's done in the style, I don't know if you guys get horrible histories over there, but it's or ghosts. It's the way looking at your history and just making mock of it. But it's really it's absolutely an adaptation of Richard III, but with much better jokes, or at least jokes that the audience now gets, as opposed to the jokes that Shakespeare's audience would have got back in the 17th century. It's all done in the manner of Dav Pilkey, and kids have been picking it up because it fits absolutely in the stuff that they're reading. They're enjoying Dogman and Cat Kid, and now they're reading Richard III. It's using the same language, and parents enjoy it because it's got lots of jokes for the adults as well as for the kids. So the different people read it at different levels, and certainly that's one I would, if you can find it online or wherever on bookstores, comic stores. Richard III by Kev F. Sutherland is an absolute belt of a comic book. See, that's what I do. I end up talking about comic books that I love, and that's what I always do.
No, I'm glad. That's great.
I'll either end up with Doctor Who, Douglas Adams, or comics I love.
I listen, and I don't remember if this is Ethan's handle or not, but I want to address this comment. There needs to be a huge conversation between opposing sides here about working together to fix this mess. We can't just say, well, Dogman's doing okay. Retailers are depending on our stuff. And then further, he asked if, let me finish the thought. He also said, well, how do we get kids into our kind of comics? I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way, in my opinion. I believe. Hold on, Rich. Let me say my thought first, and then by all means, no. God bless you, man. It's all right. I want you on because I want to hear your points, but I'll put my points in as well. I don't know what the Dogman readers of today are going to want 10 years from now, and that's fine. Let them explore it on their own. They are getting superhero stories through television, through movies, just as we did when we were kids, and we also found, because our entertainment options were more limited, when we were children
Good.
to also find great enjoyment out of classic superhero stories. I do believe that will always be there for them as an option, but I'm okay with this generation if they choose not to read what we adults are enjoying and want something else, but it's still in the comic format. That's great.
I mean,
That's
I look back again. What was big in the 30s, and it was always kind of like crime and police comic books playing off the pulps. You look at the huge rise of Western comics, and that was a big thing. Or the Dell books. I mean, there have been different tastes. I mean, Jack Kirby gave the world romance comics in the 50s as well. There's things come along, and I don't know. I was just saying, I think the direct market kind of preserved superheroes for a while, and maybe that won't always be there in the same way that it used to be. But I mean, I hope it is, because I bloody love a superhero comic book. It's still my favorite. So the answer is, I don't know. You're right. Comic book retailers are great. They're the greatest advocates for comic books you'll find on the planet.
That's where they got in the business. They love them.
Phil Ball talking about it, and I absolutely agree with him. Phil Ball, that they are free marketers for the comic book medium across the world, and I really think should be so better supported by the publishers who push things through them. But there's so much stuff out there. There is so much stuff out there. It's hard to get through. But I think comic book readers are in the best placed to see this. But they will also twist and turn. Now, if they only will sell one kind of comic book, that might be a problem. But most comic book retailers that I know are quite good at finding other things, finding where the market's going, trying new things, and if they do, doing more of them. I mean, that's kind of what I do on Bleeding Cool a lot. I mean, I write about a lot of stuff, all sorts of things. But if something hits, I'm going to write more of it. And I will write a lot more of it. And when I get an audience for something, it'll keep coming because I'm following the audience. And comic book stores do that. I mean, I was looking at Forbidden Planet in London recently, and they've moved into manga in a massive way since lockdown, basically. There was a big manga drought for a while, and people couldn't get manga. And so Forbidden Planet could. It helps that they're owned by the same people who own Titan Comics, who've started a manga line. So they can bring stuff in, and they've found a big audience there. And that's great. But there's also lots of other stuff as well. So I would, there are all sorts of ways that retailers survive. Not everyone will, and not everyone did. Even during the 90s boom, when things were doing good, I saw new comic book stores that went under. There were often all sorts of reasons for places to go. Often it's down to rent, often it's down to costs and prices, energy and stuff. And right now, you're right, there are other options. There are a lot more options now than there used to be. But print is an amazing thing for people to keep coming back to. There's nothing quite like picking up a comic book. You can't quite do it as well as you can on the screen. I'm sorry, motion comicsology people, but you can't. And I will always prefer. But is that because I'm old? I don't know. My kids, the comic books they read, generally in print. They watch them on screens, but they read in print. I don't know how long that will continue.
I hear you.
Do you ever see the TV show Pennies from Heaven?
Sure.
Starring Bob Hoskins. It was about a guy traveling the country selling sheet music at a time when vinyl was starting to come to music stores, and he was struggling trying to find sheet music because the music shops that he was selling to was switching to vinyl. Who wants to buy sheet music when you could actually buy the actual sound itself on a what it would have been then, 78 or whatever. And I look at that every now and then. I think, I don't know. I get worried. Are we all Bob Hoskins? And maybe we are. But then again, I look at the actual numbers. I think, no, actually, hang on. There's still life in the old dog yet. So I'm committed and divided.
I will address this directly because apparently Comics are as pro secrets is Ethan. And yes, we have, Ethan. We've done loads of conversations. Are you afraid to talk to me now? How come? I'm not afraid to talk to you, Ethan. I if I may, and I'm sorry, and I should probably have this with you one-on-one, but I'm just disappointed that you've decided to weaponize your point of view so drastically. And that bothers me. It makes me uncomfortable. I think you can print the kind of comics you want to print without attacking people who disagree, publishers who disagree. I enjoyed our conversations and always did. But I really do feel that in the last couple of years, you've weaponized your opinions rather than just put out your own comics. And I think there's room for the kind of comics you want to publish, and I think there's room for the comics that others want to publish. It's that basic. And I'm sorry again that I feel like you're just kind of, really going beyond just printing your stories and stuff and kind of attacking people. I don't think that's cool. That's me. Whatever. I think Rich is going to write an article of everything I just said, probably.
No, I was just looking through. I've always got comics around me, and while we're talking about stuff, I really wanted to talk about Mark Stafford's work. There we go. Salmonella's Smorgasbord is recently published by Soaring Penguin, and it's a collection of his work over the years. This is a guy who I kind of compare to a mix of Scotty Young and Troy Nixie and Charles Burns and Robert Crumb and even Dawkins. And his stuff is very, very funny, very, very beautiful. A little bit of a Mickey there. And if you get a copy of this, it's one of my favourite comic books of the year. The Salmonella Smorgasbord. If you can find it anywhere, in a comic book store from you or from a publisher, utterly, it is absolute joy. It's one of my favourite things I've read all this year. So, again,
excellent.
I want to talk about comic books that I love more than anything else.
I hear you, man. Well, again, I think we've beaten this horse, and I'm sure the chat is going to continue. But I don't know. I let's talk about
how are you doing, John? What are you up to? I never get to hear about you.
I'm doing fine. I'm enjoying. Well, that's the thing, man. I gotta say, I continue to find many comics that I enjoy, whether they are presenting an alternate point of view within their hero, or they're just traditionally good comics. I was telling Rich, I'm going to talk to Brian Hill next week. Brian Edward Hill is writing a great Blade comic. I really love this current arc where Blade has decided he needs to go to Dracula as a mentorship and find a way to defeat this current foe. And I'm like, that's a great idea.
It's all building up to an event.
Of course. And that's fine. That's excellent. Well, and that's the other thing I wanted to ask, Rich. How do you think the events were received this year by the Big Two?
Oh, well, that isn't because
that's a question.
They're definitely okay. This is what I think's been happening with the events: is there's no longer an event. Every event is now a prequel to the next event, and that's an interesting move. It's never been quite as obvious, and I think DC are definitely doing this right now. Every single event they do has the next event in mind, and so if you enjoy one event, you then absolutely have to get the next one. And so they're almost turning, because we've had serialized comics for so long, now we're getting serialized events. And that can, and often does, bring fatigue.
Agreed.
When you feel, I like this stuff. I have to divorce what do I like and what's good for the industry, because they're rarely going to be the same things, are they? But I like the fact that when you're reading Night Terrors, it was all setting up Lazarus Planet, which is now setting up the next stuff for the Amanda Waller things. And I've been thoroughly enjoying the DC Amanda Waller storylines. I think it's great. She's one of my favourite characters that DC have, her and Hellblazer. So I've been enjoying that. But I also know that not everyone is going to be as committed or invested as I am or can be. And it could quite well grate on people. So again, there's a divorce. There's stuff that I like, and I will write about stuff that I like. It's kind of what people expect from me, I think. But I also have to have another eye. Yeah, but how's this going to go over? And we were there for the 90s when everything kind of boomed and bust. And I look at things, I think, are we going in that same direction? We're going to have a boom with fewer sales than last time, and a bust with even fewer sales. I don't know. But again, that's the big superhero companies. There is other stuff going on around there as well. But I do like the superhero comics. Okay, here we go. My favourite Marvel book right now is the anti-events book. I don't know if you've been reading, if you've written by Ryan North, Fantastic Four.
I have been reading Fantastic Four, and I want Ryan to get on the show.
Yeah, there's like one story, which is that something happened to the Baxter building. They sent it forward in time by a year, and now they're having to run around the country until it comes back. And every issue, it's something vastly different, told in a vastly different way, and yet with that kind of strange connective thread going through them. And I think it's perfect. As it's my absolute favorite superhero comic book right now, and I look at it, I can't see a single thing wrong with it. I would keep reading that forever. I know the Baxter building's coming back and all this kind of stuff, and I don't want it to. I want it to keep. Again, that's another because I find different things to jump onto. There's also, and I think Marvel and DC have done this, is when a creator has a good idea for a comic book and they do the idea, then the powers that be say, that idea you've got, don't resolve it so quickly. See if you can get a good couple of years out of it. And
the Clone Saga. Sure.
Oh, you like it? Oh, I'll do more of it then. And sometimes you get some great stories out of that. But it does sometimes stretch a story beyond certainly where the original creator intended it. And some people can get annoyed if it's not what they were expecting. A good example would be something like the Superior Spider-Man, where Dr. Octopus becomes Peter Parker. And you know that was originally 2 or 3 issues or something like that. And then you stretch
probably a little more, maybe 2 or 3 stories, but yeah, I'm with you.
But and there are some people who are wanting to read Peter Parker Spider-Man, and we're getting Doc Ock Spider-Man instead. So yeah, I mean, the thing is, I love the stories. I thought they were great. I really enjoyed that.
I love Superior Spider-Man. I did too.
The people who feel the same way about the X-Men books. Now, I love the whole Krakoan stuff and the Jonathan Hickman House of X, Powers of X kind of thing. And there was this moment where it was like, well, do we go to Jonathan Hickman's next stage of the story? And the creators kind of go, oh, but we're still doing this. Can we keep this going on for longer? And they kind of did. And I guess I understand that because I was enjoying it as well. But for the health of the whole franchise, maybe they should have gone on to the next thing and then gone on to the next thing rather than extend it. Again, I'm selfish. If there's a comic book I'm reading, I'm enjoying it, I want more of it. Whether that's good for the industry or not shouldn't really be my concern, but kind of in my job, it kind of is. So I do get divided. Certainly, I've divided loyalties, but I think we all do to some degree, surely.
I hear you, man.
I've talked a lot. I've talked a lot in one go. I really stopped for a bit.
I'm trying to read some comments here. Lewis Southard, how you doing? If people wish comics to be apolitical, I'm reminded of that story of Steve Ditko wishing to disparage hippies in Spider-Man, and Stan Lee wanting to avoid that to appease college readers. Sure. Yes, I remember that as well.
Before, the first one, they were getting the space to beat the damn commies. And for those first few issues, everyone was a comic threat. So,
Well, you're right about that. Absolutely.
That is an interesting case. Is his history with the American Secret Services well known?
Who's the history with the American Secret Service?
Stan Lee.
Tell me, I didn't know about his.
He worked in the propaganda departments during.
Well, but Rich, that was during World War II, and I don't think you could equate Secret Service with Army propaganda.
It was the SOSC though. It was the same departments that became the CIA. And
it was. Wait a minute. The OSS became, and there was a propaganda line or group that. I'm sorry.
They had offices in the same building as Marvel. I don't know. It just feels like,
Did they have offices in the
building? I don't know. You look at it and you think, look at those early Marvel books. I mean, first of all, they were very anti-commie, but more than that, they were very pro radioactivity.
Yes, they were. Of course, they were.
Well, and also when everyone was afraid of radioactivity.
That was part of the genre. I mean, that was like science fiction. Look at all the horror in science fiction that was happening around those Atlas and then early Marvel comics and stuff.
Horror.
Please, I love this.
Bad. Radioactivity was bad. For Marvel, radioactivity was good.
Well, sure. Cosmic rays. If you
want to do a long game propaganda movement to increase the acceptance of nuclear power or even warfare, why not start with the comics?
Sure.
It's silly thought, but these kind of things do occur every now and then.
Dean wants us to bring Heidi McDonald in next time. Absolutely, I'd love that.
I love Heidi. Heidi's my favorite columnist in comics.
Oh no, I love Heidi too, and I love her point of view. Absolutely. I feel FF is back to being episodic in the best way. They got to lose Johnny Storm's mustache. Spider-Man is the other Marvel comic I'm reading. Meanwhile, Wade is killing it at DC, and I agree with that.
The world's finest books. Batman and Teen Titans, they're great. Love them.
I completely agree with that.
Look, they're some of my favorites at the moment. But again, these are stories to some degree that are looking back. I mean, they're not. I don't think they're old-fashioned, but they're taking aspects of what I guess older fans like us might have liked back when we were kids, and they're finding new ways to reincorporate them in the structure of the stories they're telling. And that's very interesting indeed. I'm enjoying it.
I'm not afraid to talk to Heidi. My buddy Sal from Around Comics. It's a rather convenient echo chamber for the people that champion all the changes in superhero comics, to write off any complaints about these changes as racist, bigoted, etc. Maybe it's true. I don't know, Sal. I think that's
occasionally. I mean, if you look, I did a piece.
I would say so. I would say occasionally.
When Miles Morales was announced as the new Spider-Man, and it was in the USA Today, there's a piece I did on Bleeding Cool at the time. If you look at the comment section of the USA Today, and these are the moderated comments, these are the ones that they think they allowed in. Oh my word, that was weird and scary. And people have forgotten that. And now Miles Morales is seen as kind of like, oh, that's one of the ones who was fine. It worked. It was all good. No one had a problem with that at the time. Yeah, they did.
Sure they did. Sure they did.
Things like, and people who say, oh, we love the original Carol Danvers for Ms. Marvel, not what she's become now. You look back at the letters pages from those first issues of Ms. Marvel back in the 70s, and oh my word, from both sides, everyone was very angry. The title of that comic book, Ms. Marvel, using at the time an incredibly strong, feminist, aggressive, anti-male title. It's like we refuse the titles of Mrs. and Miss. At the time, that was a massive thing. Indeed. I mean, and the letters pages, I mean, goodness, to some degree, I would say Marvel was being braver and pushing further back then than they might do now. It's given the mores of the time, they were kind of going against. I mean, again, and people always go back to Captain America, Jack Kirby, but that was a time when the US wasn't part of World War II, and the feeling of the time was an isolationist one. And this was a comic which was anti-isolationist, go and punch Hitler. It seems weird to say that's a political thing, because surely everyone agrees with that now. At the time, they didn't, and there were marches against them. People came to the Marvel offices demanding the heads of Simon Kirby. And
death threats and everything. Yeah.
Always looking at the mores of the time. The mores of the time always let you see far more what's going on than try and put it onto how we are. People use it as an excuse, as a line all the time. It was a different time. It's always a different time. There's what's that great line? The past is like a foreign country. They do things differently over there, and it's always good to try and put that in that kind of context.
I disagree with Sal here. He says, yet these changes have not done the job of bringing flocks of new readers to the stores. I don't know, Sal. I see a lot of new readers at conventions that are all about a lot of the new characters that are being introduced.
Do you remember when it was just men going to comic conventions? It seems a bizarre thing to think now, but I remember back in the 80s and there was a handful of women, and now it's either. I mean, and these are both very like multimedia conventions, but also pure comic book conventions. Like came back from Thought Bubble a few weeks ago. Things have changed, and I think that's for the good generally.
Of course it is. Listen. I recognize that comic sales
things used to be like a bit.
Right,
but the spectacles, about all sorts of stuff.
I just think the market is in transition, and it depends on the store. It depends on the store's clientele. I'm sure there are stores that are frustrated with some of the new product and stuff, but I do know. I mean, I know stores here in Chicago. My good friends Art and Franco own a store in suburban Chicago, and I've seen customers come in that weren't your typical knuckle dragging male comic fans like us, and are looking for Kevin Keller Archie comics, and are looking for the LGBTQ plus comics, and also more people of color, and are thrilled that the options are there.
Here, I think, is the challenge. I think maybe what we now have is a wider and shallower fan base. So they're buying fewer items, kind of stuff, but it's spread out over a greater amount of people, but they're buying fewer. Whereas before we had a narrower but deeper fan base with a lot of people buying a certain kind of comic book, which is harder to deal with. But maybe that's the changing market. It's harder, but it's not impossible, and there are new challenges to be faced. It's hard, but it always has been hard. I think it was Tom Brevoort who said something like the comic book industry has been dying since 1938. He's got a t-shirt. Yes. It's a good line. There's always been stuff.
Frank Miller in the 70s being told it's a dying medium when he was breaking in the 70s. Absolutely,
this is the new stuff, and there's going to be challenges, and there'll be new answers. I hope there's more answers now, and the fact that you've got a whole variety of people offering their own positions and their own comics and their own stuff, it's great. I mean, this is the other thing. I remember when Dave Sim was doing all his self-published books, and he was kind of pretty much the only one. Now that's the norm. So much has been modeled on what he broke out back in the late 70s and early 80s, is the idea that people can actually kind of create their own comic books. Crowdfunding has done that for all sorts of people. Mark was being very negative there earlier about crowdfunding and retailers. I don't think that's true. I see a lot of crowdfunding that's used to basically establish that a book exists. They can sell it to a few hundred people, they can get a print run, and they can then get that into other comic book stores. There's one comic store I know of in France which just sells crowdfunded comic books and nothing else, because it's realized sometimes it's quite hard to get hold of them after the books have been crowdfunded and it hasn't found a publisher. So he kind of has them in stock. And so if you want to find a crowdfunded comic book, he's great for, he's got loads of them in English and French kind of stuff. And he's found a big market.
Ryan Brown carved out here in Chicago, carved out a very nice crowdfunding community. Occasionally has put out image books and stuff, and found it better to just do his own thing. I mean, that's
you talked about Jim Palmiotti recently. I mean, he's made an absolute cottage industry as well. And he's put out
absolutely.
How many books has he put out? Lots. How many pages? Lots. And he's finding a new way of doing things. And,
so is Ethan and the various people on the right that are so frustrated with the direct market.
On the right,
so,
but you're right. There are a lot more routes to market when there used to be. Back in the old day, it would be, what's the old line? Someone breaks into comic books and they close the door behind them so no one else gets in that way. That I don't think is now true. I think now people can absolutely follow the paths that other people have taken. We were talking about Mark Millar before. I think Mark Millar is a sensational example of someone who found a new route to getting his books out and popular, and using Miller Worlds through a variety of publishers. Back in the day, remember, it was Dark Horse, Avatar, Top Cow, and Image, and Marvel. And then he kind of consolidated them and then sold it to Netflix in en masse. And that was an amazing, he made so many people rich. All those early Miller World artists, they did very, very well out of that deal.
Sure they did.
And now he can do pretty much whatever he wants. And it's a great position for him to be in, including, it seems, coming back to do Superman. You're right, I don't think he needs to. I think he's going to come. I think a lot of this is about him coming back to Superman to save comics. And some of this, I think, is him kind of like preparing the way for his return. So I think that's partially it. I don't know, but great.
I don't know. He always said eventually he had told me. Me too. And he had always told me in previous conversations eventually he'd come back to Superman and stuff. And again, maybe he was just kind of testing the temperature and seeing. I don't know. I understand.
Playing with media. I mean, he talked about it himself. He will put out false narratives. He admits to this to get a lot of attention, and then he waits until I come along or someone else comes along and exposes it as being lots of nonsense, and he gets a whole bunch more publicity as a result. And he's talked about this as well. It's like, it's all playful. He is the best person I've seen. If you look for new stuff, he media better than anyone else. Amazing.
I don't know. Oh, that's hilarious. Do you really? They say that my hair's a hairpiece. That's fantastic. That's outstanding. You're having to prove. Guess what, kids? I don't know how to break it to you. I got good hair. F you, Pike.
I tell you this.
This is the kind of insanity. This is the kind of insanity that I'm talking about on the extremes, and also the idea that you're obviously being paid for this point of view. And I've gotten that before. And it's like, really? The check hasn't come in. I don't know how to break it to you.
Well, that's it. Yeah, all these people are meant to pay me. I'm paid by Avatar Press. Avatar Press owns Bleeding Cool. They pay me, and that is my income for Bleeding Cool, and it's great. If I wish I was part of some kind of cabal where I get all these stories fed to me, all these extra payments fed to me. I would love that. It would make my life a whole lot easier. But yeah. So yeah, pay me. Yeah, if you want me to shill for you, let's come up with a deal. I'm sure we can come up with something.
Good Lord, man.
As it stands, no.
Am I keeping you awake? I'm glad you're talking, and I'd like to talk more. I don't know, man. I don't know. Blue Boy says that he's a bisexual man. It's a lie that there are tons of LGBTQ fans buying comics. They are not. You need to stop speaking for people. So disingenuous. Well, I'm sorry. I've only experienced my own experience in these comic shops where I've seen various people of all stripes and of all creeds and orientations come in and find comics for themselves. And that's what I believe. I believe it's a big enough market. And the publishers will decide if they're not selling enough. Well, again, you can go to crowdfunding and stuff, as those on both extreme sides of the political spectrum have done, and found success and have connected with an audience. I agree that comic sales are down, and I get that. And I think a lot of it more has to do with, as Rich and I've said, is more about the price point than I think anything else.
There's nothing in this industry that can be fixed by all the comic books being half the price that they are right now.
Yeah.
Nothing that could be solved by that.
Nothing can be solved?
Nothing that couldn't be solved.
Couldn't be solved. All right.
By every comic book half the price. Again, they were talking about Mark Millar doing something similar to that with Nightclub. And he was talking about how he sold a lot more as a result. But then the cost of paper went up by a lot, by like doubling, tripling. And I can see how that, it's going to make it a lot harder. So, but it is the price point of so much stuff, but whether that be in stores, a lot of it's under shipping as well. There's just a lot of extra money that has to be found to get this stuff going, and that's a big shame.
I'm hip.
People look to digital as a solution for that, and I don't see that either, because as I said, people do actually still like to pick up a comic, whether that be a superhero comic, a full glossy superhero comic book, or a big fat phone book of manga. The cost of someone's saying about the cost of paper and printing, it's insane. Maybe at some point it'll come down relatively, and we'll have a different conversation. I would like that. Yeah. I'm hoping also that publishers, if they suddenly get a big discount on the printing, won't keep the prices where it was and just take the extra profit that they now gained. People do make those kind of decisions. It's interesting, getting to talk about money, that Vault Comics has had a couple of books out recently, and they basically just gave the first issues away to retailers, and they have seen a massive upswing in orders for the second issues, more than they could ever have expected. I mean, there's a small indie, maybe they might have expected 9, 10, 12,000 possibly, and instead they've been getting 30, 40, 50,000 for the second issues, things like that. Wow. Because they've given away like 200,000 or 150,000, whatever it is, of the first issues, and they found audiences who are then willing to pay to get the next bit. I mean, that again, so many other industries have found success with freemium content. The idea that you give the first bit away for free and then come back. There's potential to do that with Free Comic Book Day that I don't think has been successfully done like that for a while. Maybe the last time was, I know, Civil War II, when they managed to get an audience based on a free giveaway. But there are other possibilities out there trying to get people over the hump, because again, as people say, if there's enough excitement about things, people will somehow find a way. I
agree. Sorry, I'm fixing my toupee as we're talking.
It's a beret. Come on, it's a beret. Get it right.
I'm sure. I guess Ethan is sharing the feed. He's like, "We got 800 people watching you right now, John." I can only imagine what your followers are saying about me, Ethan, and that's okay.
I've had a few things over the years, but
exactly, Rich. I understand. Yeah, man. I've seen it, unfortunately, and I understand. And I just want to understand this cancel pigs thing. I don't get it. I still don't understand some of the broad strokes of it. Well, other than
I think you'll survive. But no, I would go back because I know I've had a bit of people coming back at me about this. No, I absolutely am against people being cancelled in comics and other stuff for their beliefs across the spectrum. And it has been across the spectrum. And it's a damn shame, because I don't like that at all. And I will accept all sorts of people with that, because I usually do.
I understand.
People put up the tolerance, the whole big tolerance argument and kind of stuff. I get tolerance and intolerance, and I disagree with that as well. But it's a very good comic book strip that someone put together. It's a great way of doing it as a comic book. I just disagree with it.
I hear you. I wanted to talk movies.
Comics are really good at getting ideas across. And this is
100%. Yeah. Absolutely. Since the beginning. Yes. Yeah. Like you said, even Jack Chick, these ridiculously extreme religious comics that were, still get passed around.
Yeah. So that again, why I think we need to keep comics going. So because they're a great way of getting information out there, and who knows when we're going to need it.
Well, and I agree with what War Habit says here. What don't you understand about Twitter acting like a mob trying to ruin people's lives? It's been going on for years.
I've been against that as well.
As have I. Yes.
I was just talking about what happened to Nick Spencer not that long back, and he was absolutely slammed for stuff, and it was really horrible stuff from people who I like. And I got into all sorts of arguments with people about kind of stuff. I've been cancelled myself, or not cancelled, blocked, all sorts of things as a result of that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't like it. Whether it's Ethan, whether it's Jonathan, whoever it is, I don't like it.
This is hilarious. I do not love Comicsgate. I'm sorry. Maybe you're being ironic, but no. I'm sorry. I do have. Again, don't weaponize your point of view. That's all I ask.
There's something Neil Gaiman said that the best antidote to bad speech is more speech, and that's the thing I've tried to hold on to. Now it's been challenged a bit in the days of social media because there's an awful lot of speech out there, and not all of it is good speech. But I still hold truth to that I believe that the best way to get your information out and to counter a narrative is to say it. And I know not everyone goes along with me on that, but it's something that I think I hold hard to myself. So that is the hill I will die on. I think is free speech despite everything that comes with it. Yeah,
Rich, I don't always agree with what you put out there, but again, I believe in the First Amendment as long as you're not hurting people. That's all that's all
that's the fist isn't the fist as long as it doesn't touch my nose kind of thing. You bring your fist as much as you like, as long as it only comes a millimeter close to my nose. That's the old line. But again, these days, what counts as the nose? What counts as the fist?
I hear you.
I
hear you. I don't know. And Ethan, I don't know, man. I really, Jesus, if anything, man, we should talk on the phone because I would really rather talk to you directly because you're talking to me directly right now. I can't. Well, you know what I mean. No, but it's one-sided, and Ethan's only on the chat, and I do feel this is an unfair advantage. And we've known each other long enough that, much like Gail Simone, trying to understand where Miller's coming from, I'm really thrilled that they're having that conversation. I hope Miller has it with Wade as well. And I think poor Kelly Sue is kind of thrown in there just for effect as well. Yeah. And I know she's outspoken with her point of view. But again, I find Kelly Sue to be incredibly reasonable. And
she's taught me stuff that she's said that I've absolutely changed my mind upon. It's these days it's hard for anyone to change their opinion about anything.
Well, man. What happened to that, Rich? What happened to people hearing a different point of view and having a nuanced reaction back of, all right, I didn't think of it that way.
Most weeks, but yeah, I know what you mean.
My favorite
things that I go back and think, oh, that has totally changed the way I see something. So when Gail, she parodied me. She did. You can find it in her early columns that she was doing. She did. She got me. She got me like a little bug on a pin. She parodied me. She satirized me, and I just look back and think, yeah, even 30 years on or whatever, yeah, you got me back then. So absolutely,
it was pretty funny. I remember that. I remember that. Kelly Sue really, because when Captain Marvel, when Carol Danvers became Captain Marvel, and they put her in the Marvel suit, I'm like, I liked the bathing suit and the blown out hair. Am I an asshole? And she, God bless Kel. I love Kel. I'll admit it. I'm biased when it comes to Kel. She's like, John, imagine a superhero funeral, and everybody's there looking solemn. And there's Ms. Marvel in her onesie and her thigh-high boots trying to be exactly. And I started laughing too. And I'm like, all right, I get it.
I mean, in just tighty name order funeral and just his tight little greenies. I don't know. Superhero they're always distinguished. Now, are they?
Well, Wonder Woman could put the cape, every now and then she's got the red cape with stars so she can cover up and everything.
One of my favorite Tom McFarlane portrayals of Spider-Man was Spider-Man in a tux. Still the mask on.
Yes.
To the tux. But I love that. I thought that looked great. I wanted to do more of that. Spider-Man in a tux. Marvel, if you're watching or anything, put some more Spider-Man in a tux comics. I will buy them. I'll buy them anyway. But do anyway. But yes, definitely do that.
Well, I'm sure we disappointed the chat, Rich, because we pretty much focused on our own discussion. and I do apologize, everybody, because I do think there are some good points being made. I also think there are some people not being nice people right now, and that's a shame. What are you going to do? That's the internet, kids. That's the internet.
About stuff. I'm always happy to talk about stuff. Just be nice.
Well, here, all right. Ramsey has a nice question for you. What's poor Ian Gibson, Pat? What's your favorite Ian Gibson comic?
I mean, Grim Toad was the one that I fell in love with most because it was in Stripper magazine I was buying, put out by Marvel UK. But over the years, some Slayer love. I'm going to always go back to Halo Jones because Halo Jones was, again, one of those comics that made me think differently about stuff. And it played up on some of Heinlein's things. And I look back and I think about lots of other stuff that I've liked. I look at things like Rose, the first episode of Doctor Who, and I see that in The Ballad of Halo Jones. The idea of someone very ordinary going on and doing something extraordinary. And I like that as a narrative arc of take someone who's got nothing to their name and you give them the world and they take advantage of it and use it. And the way he portrayed the loop and the world in Halo Jones, I wish there'd been more of it. I feel like it's his greatest world building exercise. He just crafted that out of nothing. And so, yeah, The Ballad of Halo Jones is an absolute favorite. Again, I may have certain blinkers on because of when I read it and things like that. But yeah, Ballad of Halo Jones. If anyone's watching, for whatever stream you're doing it, go out and buy The Ballad of Halo Jones. Now, at the time, of course, that was what you would call a woke comic because it had the first female lead strip in 2000 AD. And there were letters. So, what can you say? Alan Moore, he's been doing it for a long time. And Ian Gibson was a wonderful partner in that particular project.
I was talking to Pat Mills a week or two ago about, oh God, now I'm blanking on the girl comic that Rebellion was.
He's done quite a few. Which one? Misty or Jackie?
It was Misty. It was Misty. Indeed, it was.
That was an amazing comic.
I've been reading it.
What young girls in the 70s in Britain really wanted to read was horrible stuff happening to other girls. It was like horror stuff, mystery, people dying, also terrible things happening to people. They just really liked the drama of it all. So, and again, they kind of like backed into it. They looked to see what was popular and they just did more of it. And then they kind of learned all their chops and then they kind of decided, well, let's do that for boys and gave them 2000 AD. So absolutely, it's a great bunch. Yes, we were talking about Pat Mills because we were talking about the Doctor Who, the Star Beast.
Yeah, Star Maker and everything. Yeah, man. I love Pat. I love Dave. I'm so happy for them. Yeah, show it, man.
That was I found a grab from my collection. That was Doctor Who Weekly that I picked up when I was probably about 6 or 7. Partially because it had Roman on the cover, obviously. But there we go. Right. The pages. We have Doctor Who Star Beast, which
boom. I'll zoom in again for the Dave art.
Which has just been the names are on the bottom somewhere. There we go.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Dave Gibbons, Mills and Magna.
Indeed.
And so I love the fact that could be picked up. You never know where these comics will go. And this tiny little comic book licensed by Marvel UK. This is a Marvel comic that years later becomes.
Oh, I remember. Oh no. It's funny, Rich. Some savvy comic shops were smart enough to carry Doctor Who monthly. So I was picking that up in the 80s and stuff. And it was an import, but I was glad to get it because I love Doctor Who and it was more Doctor Who content. So
were you there for the Frobisher issues?
I was
Love Frobisher.
Oh yeah, no, I've talked to. Yeah, so do I, man, and I love that Big Finish even threw in some Frobisher in some of their dramas and stuff. So yeah.
Do you remember Abelsome Dark, Dalek Killer? From Steve
yes,
Allen?
I have read a few of those. Yes, indeed.
That was proper, like early Punisher type stuff, but with Daleks and a man with a chainsaw. Wonderful.
I love talking to Rich Starkings about Marvel UK and the prime of Marvel UK and some of the ideas that were coming from Marvel UK and stuff.
A certain 616, which seems to be quite popular these days. That was Dave Thorpe and Alan Moore and Alan Davis back in the Captain Britain days.
Indeed, absolutely.
I came across a lovely, weird, fun story. Have we got time to share, like 3 minutes?
Yeah, 100%, sure.
Okay. In the recent Excalibur comic books, they brought back a bunch of the old Captain Britain characters, including some of Betsy Braddock's friends who were all killed off in those comics. Because Krakoa It can revive people, bring them back from the dead. And so it brought back a whole bunch of mutants from the 80s. There were only seen like 1 or 2 comics written by Alan Moore, drawn by Alan Davis. And one of them was had the surname of Reppion. And John Reppion is Alan Moore's son-in-law. And I thought, well, but that's a character from back then. And I look, and he was always called that. I look and all the, he was always called. How does that happen? Has a character you create called John Reppion, and your son-in-law decades later is also called John Reppion? That's weird. And I looked into it, and apparently the guy who was putting together the Marvel guides to characters, like in the 90s, all these characters, they just had first names when they appeared in those early Captain Britain stories. So he gave them all surnames, including one of his mates, John Reppion. So he put his name on there. So basically, Alan Moore created a character who was named after his future son-in-law without knowing about it, until it actually only comes up into print and people go, what? How is this possible? It feels like TARDISes had to have been involved. A weird string of connections and coincidences that I loved.
What someone in the chat wanted to know who your favorite Doctor is.
Oh, now you see.
You can do more than one. It's all right, Rich.
Technically, it's going to be Peter Capaldi. I love Peter Capaldi as a Doctor. Absolutely. However, the 7-year-old child inside me is screaming out Tom Baker.
Sure.
Because obviously that's great. And what I did like, if you can get people, this is free. The BBC Sounds app. I may have mentioned this to you before now. It's free, streams globally. They've got a bunch of Big Finish Doctor Who's on there, which was free, globally streaming, including Out of Time, which is the Tom Baker, David Tennant crossover.
Oh my, I didn't know about that. I'm going to find it.
There's a whole bunch of them. There's a great one, like a story just before Unearthly Child, read by the actress who played Susan. So you've got a whole bunch. That's a good one. But one with the Tennant Baker crossover, that's a pretty good one.
Oh, I'm gonna have to hear that. That's fantastic. My God.
BBC Sounds is the thing I generally push them on these things as an app. Everyone should get it and just dive into some stuff. There's loads of great content that's free and is some of the best stuff you'll find anywhere.
Well, I'm an audio freak, man, and I'm constantly on 4plus looking at whatever their daily schedule is of stories.
Have I pushed John Finnemore's souvenir program on you yet?
No, talk to me.
The best thing the BBC have done for a very, very long time. It was a sketch show written by a guy called John Finnemore, who basically was the co-writer of Good Omens too, with Neil Gaiman.
Yeah.
But he's been writing a sketch show on BBC Radio for a decade plus, 15 years, and a bunch of other stuff as well. But the sketch show is some of his best work. And Series 9 was done in lockdown when he didn't have an audience, because he would go around the country testing out the sketch show, get feedback, rewrite it, and then put it out. And he didn't have that, and he didn't have an audience, so he did something else. He did a broken comedy set over 6 episodes, half an hour each, with one family. That it begins, they're in a Christmas lockdown party, all talking to each other on the devices, and then it goes through each of their individual timelines through 122 years of stories that interlink, that cross over, all the family kind of sayings and things that you get. It dives into those and finds out what makes family, the secrets and lies that families have and they don't even know exist. It's 3 hours and it's absolutely beautiful. It's very funny. It's very poignant. It's John Finnemore's souvenir program, Series 9 on the BBC Sounds app. I've sometimes described it as Big Numbers, the sitcom, and that's the best thing. And I would recommend it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
So there we go.
Ramsey wants to know. He says you recommended him a great BBC radio show about angels.
Yes. I can't remember which one it is, but there was one. Also, there was, now, unless you want one about demons as well, there's a great one called Damned Andrew, which I think is still on the app, which is narrated by Alan Moore, and it's a sitcom about what happens when a whole bunch of hellmouths or portals from hell emerge in London. But it's a year on since that happened, and we've all had to kind of just get on with our lives, even though there's demons all running around the place and pushing up the prices of houses and causing problems on the Northern Line. So you have to find different ways around, and also, and you can't get served at a bar anymore because there's too many. And your cat's still possessed by Hitler, and there's all this kind of stuff. So it's a great, if you can find Damned Andrew, I also recommend that.
Good to know. Fantastic. Oh my God. Do you want to wrap, bud? I don't want to keep, if you got shit to do.
I'm here. Yeah, I'm not going.
All right, good deal. I wish there wasn't so much bullshit in the chat that we could get to some good questions here. What is well? All right. Again, I'm not even going to acknowledge that one. Sorry.
All right. I can't get any of these. I'm sure I'll get them in my DMs later.
Don't sweat it. Yeah, whatever. Well, I want to know, like, the movies that came out this year, for better or for worse.
Mm-hmm.
I understand why DC released the movies that they did, because they had them and they cost a lot of money. You got to try and get some of your investment back. But
unless it's Batgirl, then you don't. Then you just
and it is so weird that they and again, without obviously seeing it, we don't know. But God, I got to be honest, I was disappointed in the Flash. I just felt like there's just a general problem, I think, in general, Rich, for both DC and Marvel, and it's the third act, and it's Hero X versus CGI villain Y. And it's really become
with the same powers.
It's become tedious. Yeah, it's become tedious. It's really become tedious, I think. Even the ones that don't share the same powers.
Yeah.
I didn't mind back when in 2008 when Jeff Bridges and Downey Jr. had their fight in their various suits of armor. That didn't bother me. And it hasn't bothered me in the Iron Man movies in general. I think they've had something different to say. It's obviously been this post Endgame period where I think because of the success of Guardians of the Galaxy, they think some of these other C-list, forgive the characterization.
Iron Man was C-list. Don't forget that. I don't think there's any thing as a C-list character. It's just like a C-list treatment. I've liked everything and stuff, but it's kind of weird. Things like the Marvels got a lot of. But as far as I was concerned, the Marvels was basically Ms. Marvel Series 2 guest starring Captain Marvel and Nick Fury. And if you look at it that way, I was very happy with it because I really enjoyed the Ms. Marvel TV show, and this was basically the second season of it, and that's fine with me. I rather like Loki as well. Loki wasn't bad too.
I agree with my buddy Rob Burnett, who said Brie Larson got robbed of what should have maybe followed Endgame before doing the Marvels. Because I agree with you. I think Ms. Marvel is the best thing, one of the best things to come out of DC's, or rather Marvel's TV and movie output and everything. But it would have been interesting to see when Ms. Marvel when Captain Marvel shows up and they're like, well, what are you doing? We're trying to save Earth. She's like, yeah, I was trying to save the rest of the galaxy. There's a bunch of other planets. And it would have been fun to see a prequel or a pre-Endgame story of Captain Marvel, saving one of the alien races and stuff on her own.
I'm generally quite fine with them. I don't really have I don't have a lot of expectation. I mean, I don't think any superhero movie has ever been in my top 10 movies of the year, for example. I enjoy them, and they're fun, and they're kind of good. But, I mean, this year there were much better movies that had nothing to do with superheroes at all. And those are the kind of stuff that I'm more drawn to, I guess. So I don't feel... put it this way. Here's the other thing. Put yourself back 30 years, 40 years' time, any of these superhero films that came out this year that you were disappointed by, what would you have thought about when you were 10 and all you had was droughts and nothing? Or when you did, it was films like the original Captain America. Do you remember that one? The 90s, you remember that? Yeah.
That's Salinger. Yeah.
Or the original Fantastic Four.
Yes, indeed. Corman Fantastic Four.
Or the original Justice League.
Indeed, with David Ogden Stiers is a very fat one.
I mean, to some degree, I think we're spoiled by having things like Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers, Endgame, all this kind of stuff.
Those are the good ones.
I think we've come to some degree. I think we might have been a bit spoiled, and now our expectations are far too high because these are what they are. They're superhero films. They generally follow a formula, and you kind of have a good expectation of knowing what you're going to get when you're going in. Whereas, what was that film? Was it Asteroid City earlier this year? No idea where that was going, what it would be, or where it would go. But it's not even action films. I mean, things like Everything Everywhere All at Once. No idea where that was going.
Very cool movie.
And so and that's the closest I think you're going to get in those kinds of, like, to a superhero film that has succeeded in that kind of level, because it wasn't playing to anyone's IP. It didn't have to preserve certain things for the toy rights, all this kind of stuff. So I kind of think we should have, to some degree, less of an expectation from a superhero film, because we know what it has to do going in. And it's some things when you hear people like, various old film directors talk about how superhero films aren't cinema and things like that. I mean, that's nonsense. Of course they are. They're just a different type. There's a different kind. They're a blockbuster movie, and there's certain things that happen with blockbusters, and that's fine because we can enjoy them for what they are. We shouldn't. Not every superhero film has to be Endgame. They can be other things as well, and they can be for different audiences. Not every superhero film has to be for the person who saw the last superhero film. There's partly, I think, a lot of it's tied to budgets. They have to try and money spent stuff, and that is insane. I was talking. Do you ever see the TV show Misfits at all? Superhero. No. It was it ran on British television. I know it was in the States. It was basically about a bunch of like low-level criminals who like doing professional. They're basically they're being sentenced to do some kind of like make work in the local community, and so they've all got the jumpsuits on, the orange jumpsuits. And
is this the Stephen Merchant show with
no.
Chris Walken?
No.
Okay,
no.
go on.
Yes. But you anyway. So basically, had a bunch of these low-level criminals. It's like that. That show was very much like Misfits, except in Misfits they all got superhero powers.
I see.
And they were cheap powers. They were very cheap powers, like invisibility and mind reading and things like that. And it was great. It was hilarious. One of my favorite superhero things that's been on the screen, because it's all about the people and the characters and what they do with their lives, and the fact that none of them want to become superheroes, because that's not even an option for them. They're low level, but they don't also want to become supervillains. They just would like to get through the day. Thank you very much. And there were 5 series of that. And one of the problems was that the Hollywood studios started picking off the actors. So they grabbed some for Game of Thrones or grabbed some for the Hobbits. They had to keep bringing in new people, and that lost a bit of it. But it was still great. And this year, I think it's Disney in the UK, Disney Plus in the UK, Hulu in the States. They kind of a kind of a thematic sequel called Extraordinary, which is set in London, where everyone gets a superhero power when they're 18. And it's set in a bunch of flatmates, and they're not great powers. They go to a dentist who has the unfortunate power that everyone she meets, she gives them a theme tune in there that gets played out. So anyone who goes to see her as a dentist, she's fed up of hearing the Jaws music constantly playing whenever they go through the door. And then the main character doesn't know what her power is, and everybody else has one. Her mum has got the power to manipulate technology, except she's really bad at technology. One of her friends can bring people back from the dead and spends most of the time bringing back Hitler and taunting him. And so it's all these kind of, but set as a kind of as a 20-something drama in the east of London. Extraordinary. It's on Hulu and Disney Plus in the UK. It's coming back next year, and it is extraordinary. But those are the kind of superhero stuff that I like, where you can basically do anything and go anywhere, and it doesn't have to specifically serve a certain narrative point. And I think, again, we were talking before about how superhero, the power fantasy, how it used to only be one thing, but now it can be anything. And I think that could be. I think the film should learn that as well. That a superhero stories can be so much more. Superpower, super fiction, whatever you want to call it. It can be so much more than just the superhero journey. There's an aspect of the superpower can exaggerate aspects of a character, and you can take those and run with them and see where they go. And I love those. Some of the best, I think, superhero films haven't actually been technically superhero films at all. They've just been people with who can teleport, or who can travel in time, or who can do a thing. And for all intents and purposes, I mean, that's a superhero film. They just do something else with it with their abilities. And I think that's great. I prefer those, I think.
Well, I liked Gen V this year, the boy spin-off. I mean, my God, that was, and it really was like something I'm like, I don't know if I like it. I loved it. And as I get older, and shame on me, I still haven't seen Blue Beetle, because I got to be honest, I'm kind of aging out of the teen superhero story, and a little of interest.
You're aging out of it, yes. Well, yeah,
and that's okay.
You look like a teenager, surely. I mean, with the hair and everything, absolutely.
Well, certainly, my hair is only 15. So yes, because I am not only am I a sponsor for Hair Club of Men, I'm also a client, as we've learned today. This is not my real hair. Exactly. Hilarious.
Now that feels like an American reference that I'm not going to get.
Indeed,
I'm going to roll with it.
It is, and I appreciate that. Oh, God. Let's see what else. I'm trying to find anything other than, hate that I'm seeing. Right now. Even like, whatever, guys. It's fine.
All these people trying to cancel me. It's just, it's terrible.
What are you going to do? I love it. All right. And Ethan, I'm laughing. You're right. The line from Goodfellas. Maurice wigs don't fall off even in water. That's right. So funny. Don't sweat it, kids. I can handle the nonsense that I'm seeing in the chat. I see some of my regulars are like, sorry about this, John. It's like, no, it's all right. It's fine. It's okay. I knew this was going to be controversial because I
don't think I didn't think it'd be that controversial.
I don't think I did either. And again, I think I've tried to explain where I'm coming from on this. What are you going to do? It's fine. It's fine.
Chog. Hang on, there we go.
What do you got there?
I've got Chog here from Chew. Lovely comic book. Yeah, staring into your eyes. There you go.
Very cute. Very
Chog.
Nice. Well, anyway, my man. Good talking to you. We can wrap here if you want. I like I said, the whole cancel pigs thing confused me, especially when I didn't understand where it started and where.
10 years' time, it'll be a franchise. You watch it on Disney Plus. You can't wait for the next episode of Cancel Pigs. It'll be huge. I'll tell you.
Some Hollywood exec is taking notes and is making a movie.
So I
probably.
Scott Pilgrim.
Probably. Well, everybody, thanks a lot. You had a much more spirited discussion in the chat than Rich and I.
I'm glad that sounds good. People have, like I said, I always like people talking about stuff. So hey,
no, it's cool. We're gonna we'll be back with more word balloon interviews next week. But I love that Rich came on, and I'm glad that we had his chance to chat and catch up, man. Good to see you. All the best, and thanks for playing today. And everybody, thanks for watching. More Word Balloon Live next week. I hope you'll join us. I'm going to talk to Christopher Priest. I'm going to talk to Brian Hill. Talk to my buddy Sal Crivelli from Comic Pop, another great YouTuber that talks comics and stuff. And I hope you'll join us. Until next time, everybody stay safe.
Okay. I just want to say, if anyone does want to come up to me and say hi, personally, I'm usually at the London Film and Comic Cons, the MCM Londons, and Thought Bubble. So there we go. Yes.
And of course, by the way, Rich and his writing at bleedingcool.com. Please,
Finally, we got the plug. Finally, we got it in there. Excellent.
I'm sorry, buddy. Yes, I was about to sign off without giving you the props. But all the best, everybody. Thanks for watching.